Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second talk between Vitae Talks. My name is Pablo Urbina. I'm a conductor, and I'm the principal conductor of Orchestra Vitae, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to this second talk. I hope that many of you joined us for our first conversation with pianist Antonio Yarzabal, and if you couldn't join us live, that at least you got a chance to watch the video, which is still available on Orchestra Vitae's YouTube channel. Firstly, I want to take a moment, as always, to thank you, the Spanish Embassy in London, for its incredible support with this project that aims to bring all of you a little bit more of information and knowledge to get to know Spanish music a bit better. So thank you once more to the Spanish Embassy, and of course to the whole team on Orchestra Vitae, who so graciously gives all his time to make these talks possible. I'm really excited about today's conversation with one of Spanish most prominent composers of today, and someone that I'm very proud to call my friend. As always, the whole point of these conversations is that you are an intricate part of them. So we want you to be engaged, to participate, to comment, to ask any questions to myself, to our guests, and also to the performers from Orchestra Vitae that will be bringing some of the music that we talk about every day live for all of you to hear. So please always comment, always let us know what you think. If there is any problems, last week, as some of you know, that we had a bit of technical issues at the beginning. So we really appreciate your patience as we got used to this new system of streaming. I don't want to take any more because here my job is as a facilitator more so than as the one talking. So I want to spend the most amount of time with the person that is here with us today. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you a very brief introduction about Oscar Navarro. Oscar is a native of Novelda, Alicante, where he grew up playing the clarinet. And actually, although many people don't know, Oscar was a very, very accomplished clarinetist. As a matter of fact, he played for many years at the Spanish Youth Orchestra. Well, that's quite a big accomplishment for all of you that are familiar with this orchestra. He went on to study composition with Ferrer Ferran, which is one of his greatest mentors. And I think that there's two other names that I wanted to bring to your attention, and maybe we can ask Oscar a little bit about them. One is Jose Luis Turina, and who ran the Spanish Youth Orchestra, and then Christopher Young, the film composer. During his professional career, Oscar has been commissioned by various different ensembles like the Belgian Army and Navy Wind Band, the Spanish National Symphony Orchestra and Chorus, the International Music Festival of Altea, and his piece had been performed by many of the world's leading orchestras and wind ensembles, like the Tchaikovsky Symphony Orchestra of the Moscow Radio, the Kiev Radio Symphony Orchestra, the Santa Cecilia Classical Orchestra, Requena Philharmonic, European Royal Ensemble, Spanish Symphony Orchestra, to name a few. Navarro has recorded in some of the most notorious studios in the world, like Capitol Records, Paramount Pictures, or Warner Brothers Studios. And the thing is that Oscar's career is not just as a composer, but also he's a very, very extremely talented conductor, and like I said, a clarinetist. And as a composer, he's very versatile because he works on the symphonic repertoire, on the wind ensemble repertoire, as well as a film composer. As a matter of fact, one of his most noticeable awards and distinctions is that in 2014, he was nominated for a Goya Award for his soundtrack to the movie La Mula. Before I bring Oscar onto the stage, I wanted to play you all a little clip. And I've learned a little bit for last week of how we can make this much better for you all. So every time that I want to show you a little clip, I hope that you bear with me while I do a little bit of touching of a few buttons on this streaming service, and we'll be ready. So let me just show you a little bit about Oscar's music live with himself conducting before we introduce him and bring him onto this conversation today. I don't know about you, but every time that I watch this video, I get goosebumps. I can only imagine. I mean, I've had the privilege to conduct that amount of people in the past, but it just feels like such a great vibe to have so many people in front of you conducting. I don't want to elongate it anymore. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome onto this talk composer Oscar Navarro. Oscar, how are you?
Good evening, Pablo. I'm very good. And you?
Great, thank you. It's such an honor to have you here. And we really thank you for taking the time to participate in this conversation with us today. Let me ask you, first of all, how are you? I hope that yourself, your family, everyone is okay. We know that we've been going through some pretty difficult times. So how are you?
We are fine. I'm fine. And also my girlfriend, Noelia, is fine also, and the family. So we are very lucky. I'm here in Madrid in my house, and I have to visit my family in Alicante, but I know that everybody's okay, so we are great.
Wonderful. That's absolutely great. So, Oscar, I wanted to start this conversation today asking you a little bit about the compositional process. You know, how it must be daunting. I mean, I know that I studied composition a little bit when I was in my undergraduate studies in Los Angeles, where we first met many years ago, and I realized how difficult it is, you know, to conceive from zero a piece of music. So, how do you approach this compositional process? You know, it must be really scary to start from an empty piece of paper with just a bunch of ideas and potential. So, how do you approach this?
Well, the worst part of the process, of course, is the beginning, because it's the part where you don't have anything written in a paper. It's a blank paper. So it's a little bit scary because you have to start from something. But in my case, I always have here with me, of course, my computer and my musical programs. And I have here my sheet music, where I write a lot of ideas that comes to my mind. So I write them here in a paper. And I think the most important part is the improvisation in this process. It just be in front of the piano and improvise ideas about what I'm gonna write, and then I write these ideas in the paper. And once I have very good ideas for the piece, then I go to the computer and I start writing the whole piece. But I think the most important part of the process is to have good ideas at the beginning, just to know what do you want to say with the music, and of course spend hours and hours here in the studio. So for me, the confinement is something that sounds familiar for me, because I live here and I spend like hours and hours in the studio.
So for you, it was almost like normal business, you know, like any day. It's just that you couldn't really go outside if you felt like it. Which for a lot of us was probably the biggest and hardest thing to deal with. I just wanted to mention very briefly and show our audience another little clip, because I know for a very good from a very good source that it was very recently. It was only last week that the world of symphonic wind ensembles in Spain came back to work, and as a matter of fact, it was in the village of Manacor, the Manacor symphonic wind ensemble, that it was the first one in the whole of Spain to come back into the stage. And I think, you know, I know that you already know this, but our audience will know that actually it must have felt quite a privilege for you, because the very first piece that was performed after this confinement was one of your very own pieces, the same one that I just saw in the initial clip. So that must have been, of course, an honor for you.
Yeah, it has been great. And also because Manacor, I know very good all these people of the wind band, because I had the pleasure to work with them a couple of years ago. So I was very happy when I saw them starting the very first concert with Libertadores. So I got goosebumps because, yeah, all the musicians, we are dying just to go to the stage and start playing again. So just to be here in front of the computer and watch all the band that starts the first concert with Libertadores, for me was something very touching. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I have a little bit of a surprise here for the audience. If you bear with me, we're going to show them a little bit of this clip. And thank you to the Manacor Symphonic Wind Ensemble and his music director, Eduardo Bernabeu, for giving us the opportunity to show this clip. So I'm just gonna show a little bit of it, and please pay close attention. And this is all I'm gonna say to the French horns when they come into the stage. See if you can spot there's something. As you can see, all of the players of the orchestra were wearing masks, as the sanitary health protocols in Spain are very strict in the walk-ins and walkouts. So I think you can all see that. But pay attention after the music director and conductor Eduardo Bernabeu walks on the stage. What happens? Fast forward slightly. I think by now you might have realized that that one of the French horn players that was at that concert was myself. As you know, I'm currently in Palma, where I work as assistant of the Balearic Symphony Orchestra. And when Eduardo Bernabeu, which is also the principal clarinet of the Balearic Symphony Orchestra, asked me if I wanted to participate, and I saw that it was Oscar piece, I of course jumped into the opportunity to be a part of this, this once in a lifetime experience, which is to go back into the stage and to see the audience, not as many as we would have liked it to be, but because of the health protocols, but at least audience enjoying music live, which is of course fantastic. So Oscar, the topic of discussion today is about symphonic wind ensembles, and can you tell us a little bit? You know this medium of composing very well. You've worked with hundreds of wind ensembles throughout your career. How has the symphonic wind ensemble evolved? Especially with the members, the different instruments that take part, and also with the repertoire that they perform.
Yeah, like many years ago, of course, the wind bands they used to play a lot in festivities in the streets, but nowadays it's completely different. Of course, we keep playing in popular holidays. Every little town, at least here in Spain, there is a little or a big wind band. But nowadays, everything is completely different. The size of the wind band now is much bigger. There is much more instrumentation in general. There is much more interest of people that are very interested in playing in a wind band now. They have also music schools inside of the wind band, so it's very for me now it's completely different. I remember when I was playing in a wind band like 25 years ago, and well, it was very good, but now the level is going up, and for me it's very different. And I think people is taking it very serious now. It's not like 50, 60, 70 years ago. Now they treat the wind bands like professionals. And of course, we have a lot of professional wind bands now. So I'm very happy. We have a lot of things to learn about the established symphony orchestras, but also the symphony orchestras. I think they have a lot of things to learn with the wind bands, and the repertoire also. The repertoire is increasing. Every year there are a lot of composers that are writing more and more for wind band. So I'm very happy because I've been working with wind bands since, I don't know, 20 years ago. But I started when I was very young, when I was only 8 years old. So yeah, I love it. The sound, the people, the culture of the wind bands, I really love it.
And why do you think that perhaps there is such a love and passion for the wind ensemble, perhaps even more so than for the orchestras around, especially, you know, we're talking about Spain in today's conversation, although it might apply also in other places. Why do you think this is? Do you think it's because we started, and I myself also played in a wind ensemble when I was young, and that was one of the first ways in which performers we get introduced to classical music. Do you think this has something to do with the reason why the wind ensembles are so loved among the cities, the villages, or is it because the wind ensembles take part in a lot of the popular culture, the festivities and things like that?
Yeah, I think the most important reason is because I think I will say the 75% of the people, of the musicians here in Spain, we started playing in a wind band. And the reason is because we start when we are very young. I started when I was 8 years old, but now there are a lot of little kids that they start when they are 5 or 6. So this is very important because you are growing inside of a wind band. You are making friends. You are meeting new directors with the wind band. You are playing with people since you start playing in the wind band. So all this process for me is very important. It's completely different with the symphony orchestras, because if you want to play in a symphony orchestra, of course there are a few youth orchestras, but not in every town, like in the wind bands world. If you go to the Comunidad Valenciana, well, there is like 1 or 2 wind bands in every little town. So everybody that wants to play an instrument, they have to start playing in a wind band. So I think this is very important. And now if you go to the Spanish National Orchestra or the Radio and Television Symphony Orchestra or whatever big orchestras in Spain, I will say that more or less the 70% or 75% of the musicians, of course, I'm speaking about the winds and brass, woodwinds and brass and percussion, they started playing in a wind band. Yeah.
I suppose that makes quite a lot of sense, and in a way, it really shows how many phenomenal wind and brass players actually come originally from when they are young, from the wind ensemble tradition, not so much from the orchestras, which doesn't happen in other cultures and other countries around the world. Now that we're touching a little bit on this topic of orchestras and wind ensembles, and before I saw our audience the next clip. What are the main differences between writing for a symphonic orchestra and writing for a wind ensemble? How do you conceive this difference of different, these two different ensembles?
Okay, the process of writing a new piece for symphony orchestra or for wind band. The technical process or the beginning of writing a new piece is more or less the same. You have to be in front of a computer or in front of a keyboard and just try ideas and improvise. The principal difference is, of course, that with a symphony orchestra you have the strings that we don't have in the wind bands. So when you have to start a new piece for symphony orchestra, one of the most important things is to know how to write for strings. But for the wind band, you have like more instruments in general in the wind band, more than in a symphony orchestra. We have the clarinets, we have the saxophone, but you have the alto saxophone, tenor saxophone, baritone saxophone, bass saxophone, also clarinets in B flat, alto clarinets, E flat clarinets. So you have so many instruments in the wind band that when you are going to start a new piece, you have like a big palette. How do you say paleta?
A palette of colors.
Palette of colors to write in a wind band. In the symphony orchestra, is a little bit less, but of course, with the strings, with a violin, you can do a lot of technical things and find new sounds with the strings. So it's completely different, but the process of writing the music, for me, is exactly the same. But you have to know how to write for the strings, and also you have to know all the instruments that are in a wind band, of course.
Wow. You mentioned something very interesting and actually ties very nicely to our next clip because, you made a very distinct difference between wind instruments and string instruments. But I know for a fact, and our next clip will show you, because I'm sure some of our audience don't really know that this happens, that this has been changing a little bit in recent years, so that we've seen some of the traditionally string instruments that belong into the orchestra, so to speak, coming into the wind ensemble. So if you don't mind, I'm going to show our audience the next clip, which is from I believe, the Madrid Community Orchestra. And it is one of my favorite pieces of yours, I must admit. It's called the Olympus of the Gods, and is divided in different movements that pertain to the different gods. And I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this piece that I'm about to show for wind ensemble was actually originally conceived for orchestra, correct?
Yes, it's correct. It's originally for symphony orchestra.
Wow, I'd love to ask you in a moment a little bit about how you move from one to the next and some of the difficulties that you might encounter. But if you don't mind, I'm going to mute you for a moment and just show our audience a clip of this.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh. Just allow me 1 second to go back into our normal conversation mode. I'm mesmerized, the beautiful line. And actually, I don't know what the audience might think. I mean, I would love to hear their comments on our section. Please, like I said, feel free to ask any questions to Oscar, to myself, in the comment section of the YouTube live video. Oscar, how did you manage to blend such a distinct sounds? I mean, in orchestra it works very well, but here we're talking about a predominantly woodwind and brass sound that then gets blended with a bit of cellos and double basses. How do you achieve this?
Okay, mainly when I write for symphony orchestra and then I have to do a reorchestration for wind band, then I would say in words, you have to take the violins and put it in clarinets. Of course, you have the violas and cellos and use the saxophones. This is the principal, the most important thing. After that, you have to do like adjustments using other instruments to play with clarinets, maybe the flutes to get more color or the color more brilliant. Use the euphoniums playing with the saxophone section to get another dark color when they mix. So you have to know how to get the sound of the orchestra with the wind band when you are doing this kind of transcriptions. And in the wind band world now, it's a little bit easier today because we have cellos and we have double basses. And the reason is because all the wind bands, they have schools of music, and there is people that wants to play an instrument as strings, like cello or violin or double basses. So from now, all the cellists or all the double basses players, they have the opportunity to be part of a wind band. And years ago, they used to play, when they started playing in a wind band, they used to play the saxophone or parts with the cellos or the tuba parts with the double basses. But now with the new compositions, we write the music directly for cellos or for double basses. So I think that the size of the wind bands, the different instruments are growing and growing. And now we have cellos and double basses, and who knows, maybe in the future we add the viola section, or who knows. But I'm very happy with that because it's another different color in the wind band.
How do you think we'll be able to fit everyone in the stage, especially with the restriction of the space that we have now with the coronavirus, that you probably won't happen for quite a few years? I mean, I love talking about this because actually the piece that we're gonna hear semi-live, and as you know in the audience, I already talked about this, but all our guests for these talks, as well as the performers from Orchestra Vitae, we tend to meet a little bit before the actual live event occurs, and we discuss a little bit of what we're going to talk about, and also we pre-record the pieces that you will hear, so that we make sure that with all these technical difficulties that sometimes we might encounter, you can enjoy the live piece of music. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this piece in particular that we're going to hear today, which is called Osanna in Excelsis. And Osanna in Excelsis is a processional march. And I know that piece very well. I actually happened to be present in the premiere many years ago, but that's a story for another time. And how do you feel, Oscar? Of course, the way of Wind Ensemble is very much linked with a lot of religious festivities. How do you approach, you are very well known in Spain for your processional marches. And as a matter of fact, for those of you that are watching us today or in a later time through the YouTube video, this Osanna in Excelsis band has actually become, and correct me if I'm wrong, Oscar, has become quite an anthem for hope and survival during this whole COVID crisis. And as I remember, it went to be shown in all of the national TV, because many people in the little villages, in some of the little villages of Spain, were actually playing from their balconies, coming out together to play this piece of music. I mean, that must have felt really special for you.
Yes, of course. And you remember, I wrote this piece in 2009. We were together in Los Angeles studying.
Of course.
And it was for a competition in Sevilla, in the south of Spain. I wrote this piece for the competition. I didn't win, but this march since 2009, it was like the most playable march in all these religious festivities. But I couldn't expect that now, with this coronavirus alarm, people is going to start to play this piece from the balconies. It was like unbelievable for me at the beginning, just to see all of these people playing Osanna in Excelsis. And it was in all Spanish televisions, in the national television, Televisión Española, also La Sexta, Antena 3, all these big channels. And I was saying, wow, how is this possible? And after this, I start to receive a lot of emails and Facebook messages asking me if it's possible to play this march for only one instrument or a little ensemble. So I think a good idea came to my mind. I said, okay, I'm gonna do a special version for clarinet and piano, and I'm going to record it myself. I play clarinet. So after this arrangement, everybody wanted to play Osanna in Excelsis, so I did a lot of different instrumentation. I have this arrangement for clarinet, but I have also for flute, alto saxophone, cello, a lot of instruments. So for me, it was a very big surprise to see like every day Osanna in Excelsis in social media and television. So I'm very happy for that.
Wow. If you don't mind, and just before we introduce the video of the principal cello of Orchestra Vitae, Mark Walkem, who has recorded this version of Osanna in Excelsis for, in this case, principal cello, which, even though we're talking about the word wind ensemble, as we just learned today, fits very nicely because the cello is now an adopted member of the wind ensemble family. And I wanted to show you first a little bit of a clip from Osanna in Excelsis performed by Wind Ensemble. I just need to readjust myself very quickly. If you don't mind, I'm going to go straight into showing you our Principal Cello Mark Walkem performing Osanna in Excelsis in the version that Oscar had just talked to all of us about, which is for Principal Cello and piano accompanying. I hope that you enjoy. This is our live performance for today, and after that we will welcome Mark Walkem, Principal Cello of Orchestra Vitae, so that he can tell us a little bit about his experience approaching a piece of wind ensemble music for a traditionally seen instrument of the orchestra, the cello. I hope that you enjoy. This is Mark Walkem. Wow, I mean, it's really breathtaking, and I mean, I since we are about to welcome Mark in just a second, I will start by saying bravo, Oscar. I think I can definitely see how this piece has touched the heart of so many people, especially that beautiful ending, and it almost gives a little bit of hope at the end, you know, that we were gonna get through this, and it's a wonderful piece of music, and isn't that the beautiful thing that the music does for all of us, which is to bring out the deepest of our emotions when we are in distress, to make us you know, connect with our insights, and like I said, to have a hope for a better future. So bravo, Oscar, my sincere congratulations. Let me just
thank you very much.
let me just I can see him clapping on the background, so I wanted to bring onto our conversation now our principal cellist, Mark Walkem, who has so beautifully played this piece for all of us. Hello, Mark. Thank you so much for being here, and bravo to you.
Hello, Mark.
Hello. Thank you for having me on. Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Oscar, for your wonderful music. It was a real privilege to be able to play it.
So, you know, without putting you on the spot, but can you see why this piece of music, of course, is not the same to perform it by solo instrument with piano accompaniment, but did you see when you were preparing for, you know, to record it and to perform it for us today, can you see how this piece has become a little bit of an anthem in Spain through this very difficult time, which, you know, it's still hitting us very hard in the UK, sadly, and hopefully things get better, but you know, do you see that in the music, when in the way that you approach it?
Definitely. I think it's a really lovely lyrical piece of music, and really takes you on a really interesting journey. You know, we start with very kind of introspective you know, phrases at the beginning, which just start to gently unfold, and then the second half, when we really get going, it's really quite an impassioned, you know, ending, which is really good. And I think it does fit the cello quite well. Something that you were talking about before. I think it makes use of the registers of the cello, the lyrical tenor registers, as well as the, you know, the bass side as well. So I thought it worked really well. Right.
And Mark, you know, of course, the traditional wind ensembles are not as popular perhaps in the UK as here in Spain. But the UK has a very strong tradition of bands, you know, brass bands. And you know, on this topic of the addition of the cello and the double bass, you know, traditionally orchestral instruments to the wind ensemble, do you think that it fits? Do you see that is the right approach? Do you feel like they should be separated? I know that is, you know, again, not putting you on the spot, but how do you view this as a professional cellist yourself?
I think it works very well. I mean, you know, I was watching on the video there. I think they were playing the lyrical themes very nicely, and also they can add a bit of punch, I suppose, as well. You have the Mozart Wind Serenade with the double bass, the Grand Partita, the 13 wind, you know, 13 instruments. So there's something of a precedent there, maybe. I think wind bands are fairly widespread in the UK, particularly in you know, in youth setups and training setups. But you're right that brass bands are particularly popular and traditional in the UK, particularly in the north of England. Certainly.
Yeah, I feel, you know, that, well, I mean, this question, I suppose, that is particularly perhaps more for Oscar. But you know, what do you think? What do you see the place of the wind ensemble in the future of classical music? You know, in the future of the wind ensembles in general, do you think that it will continue to grow? Do you think that is the right approach to help promoting the love for classical music into youth, that then we can move on to the orchestral world, into classical orchestras? What is your opinion on this, Oscar?
Yeah, it keeps growing and growing. Every year there are more and more wind bands and more people interested in playing a wind band. And also it's very good for composers, because wind bands are premiering new pieces like almost every day. So there are a lot of composers that start writing for wind bands because they have more opportunities than write a piece for a symphony orchestra, you know. just to have a premiere with a symphony orchestra as a young composer is something like impossible, because professional orchestras, they play, all these repertoire, Beethoven, Mahler, Brahms, etc. But the wind bands are very open for new works, for new composers. So I think the future of the wind band is growing. It's going to be much better and much better every day. Yeah.
Do you have on the horizon any wind ensemble pieces on the pipeline? Anything that you're working on at the moment, or is it orchestral? What is in the future for Oscar?
Now, you mean now?
Yes, your next projects.
Yeah, I have projects now. I have projects for film music, but I'm writing now a new piece for chamber music. It's going to be for oboe, bassoon, and piano. And then the next project is going to be a piece for wind band. It's for a competition in Valencia. It has to be a 20-minute piece, and it's going to be the mandatory piece of the competition. It is going to be in 2021. But before that, I have to write this chamber music piece that is going to be also around 15 minutes, more or less. And yeah, also combined with film music and symphony orchestra, because I have to do also the transcription of my first symphony that was written for wind band. I have to transcribe it for symphony orchestra now. So yeah, I'm combining like different ensembles, and of course the wind band is always there. Yeah.
Well, I think that Mark will very much agree with me that if you ever, I know that your music has already come across the pond into the UK, and your Noah's Ark piece, as well as your Downey Overture. I know that they were performed in the UK in the past, but if you're ever, we would love to welcome. I don't think you've written a cello concerto yet, so maybe that could be in the pipeline in the future, and any other piece for Orchestra Vitae will be an absolute pleasure for us.
I'm dying to write a cello concerto because it's one of my favorite instruments. So it depends, of course, of the commissions. But from now, I don't have any cello concertos coming, but maybe in the near future. But I would love, because it's true. I love the cello. I love the cello, yeah.
I feel really, really, really horrendous today. I keep putting both Mark and Oscar on the spot here with very specific questions, but I'm just joking. Well, we're coming now to the 3/4 of an hour, which is about the length that we wanted to keep this conversation. So I'm just checking to see and if any other of you have any last-minute questions for either Oscar or Mark here, who have very gratefully joined us in today's Between Chords Vitae Talks. And if there is nothing from my side, just to thank you both. Oscar, thank you so much for running us a little bit through the history of Wind Ensemble and through your wonderful music, which continues and will continue to inspire, hopefully, many, many generations of young Wind Ensemble and orchestral players. So thank you so much for your time. And of course, Mark, thank you so much for that beautiful performance and for all the work that you've done with Orchestra Vitae over the years, and for your wonderful leadership. I'm just just looking. Yes, the embassy is just saying thank you for asking the tough questions. Yes, always trying to. So thank you so much both of you again. Once more, my name is Pablo Urbina. I'm the principal conductor of Orchestra Vitae. I'm always reachable. You have my Instagram there. You ever have any questions that you want to ask Orchestra Vitae or myself, you also have here Orchestra Vitae's details if you want to ask any questions. And I think I already put it on the comment section, but please, if you want to be updated about the news and the concerts and all the activities that Orchestra Vitae organizes, please feel free to sign up to our newsletter. One last time, the Instagram for Oscar, in case that you want to follow what he does on his social media and the various channels that I've been promoting. And once again, thank you so much to the Spanish Embassy in London and the UK for their tremendous support with this initiative, for making it possible. I hope to see many of you there. These videos will stay active for the remaining of all our conversations, which continue through the next weeks. Next week, we're actually moving from a Wednesday to a Thursday, because our guest next week, Javier Monteverde, which is one of the best, most prominent recording engineers in Spain, and who has recorded over 100 CDs of Spanish music that was a bit forgotten throughout the years, will be joining us to talk a little bit about the Proyecto Luz, which is a wonderful initiative that mixes video and some of these lesser known pieces of Spanish music. So I really hope that you can join us for that. That will be on Thursday, July 9th at the same time, 7 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Spanish time. I thank you all once again for being here, and thank you, Oscar. Thank you, Mark. Everyone have a lovely evening. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.